fresher up this morning. It's Jonathan Davis, our economist and wealth manager, who joins us now. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, John. John, I want Adam for my show.
You can have him, my friend. He used to be a recruiter at Port Talbot, so he could be good for your show. But hold on a minute. David Cameron says the government's doing everything it can to save thousands of steel jobs. Should he try to save them?
Well, of course, David Cameron also said he would negotiate till the cows come home with the EU. No, he shouldn't be doing anything with everyone else's money. I'm all for trying to bring, as Adam from Cardiff says, a private buyer in. But, if I was in the steel business, I would want to see it fall, get rid of the pensions liabilities, and then buy up for a song. That's capitalism. And that is what would be the ultimate security of these jobs. Oh, sure, there'd probably be fewer jobs ultimately, or should say after the purchase, but there would be some jobs as opposed to none, and the new buyer would have bought it with such much lower costs of running it because they wouldn't have been loaded with debt and so on, therefore giving a long-term chance to the steel business. But instead, if the state were to take it over, then they'd just continue with the current situation, and everyone else would be paying for these people. Well, that's what socialists have been saying for hundreds of years, and more socialism is never block capital's the answer.
Okay, you say it isn't the answer, but let's go through some of the accusations and see if you can myth bust them from your perspective. The front page of the Times. Steel crisis blamed on desire to woo Beijing. There's some truth in that, isn't there? That we've allowed the cheap flooding of cheap steel from China into Britain because we can't afford to fall out with the Chinese?
Mm-hmm. So, they've got 1.3 billion people in that country.
Yeah.
And although their wages have risen materially in the last several years, it is still self-evidently a lower-cost country than our own. How can we possibly compete with, quite simply, lower costs? And the only way is, as I've just described, let it go to the wall, get rid of all its liabilities, new buyer comes in, starts off with lower costs. That's the answer. The answer is not to try and manage something that we can't manage. You're talking about the Germans doing naughties against EU rules. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
it's dreadful.
Yeah, they're saying you must buy.
We can't manage.
Why can't we do that? Why can't we say, if you're building something in Britain, you'll use British steel? Why can't we say that?
We can. We can do whatever we want. But that's not the solution. All that does is entrench ultimately higher labour costs, inefficiencies, and that's, we've seen socialism throughout history failing the people in the long term, and in living memory, that's exactly what we had in the United Kingdom up until the 1970s, until the Iron Lady came out and sorted it out. Do we really want to go back to that? Because that's what Corbyn and McDonnell are saying we should be doing. Well, I've got news for you. Venezuela, the arch-socialist country in a so-called democracy, is about to go hyper-inflationary because of malinvestment. And what does that mean? The elite will do okay. The people, of course, will find they've got hundreds of thousands % per annum inflation. To buy a loaf of bread, it'll cost them their house.
So, what do you do with the 20,000 people who are going to lose their jobs?
What you don't do is try and compete with dodgy activities around the world, with subsidies from the state, with cronyism. What you do is you transform the economy so that we're actually doing business that the other guys can't do. Have you not noticed that practically all the microchips in your phones come from Cambridge? What about the pharmaceutical industry? What about our defence industry? And so on. We are world leaders. Formula One, practically all the Formula One that happens in the world
Oxford and
happens.
Yeah.
Exactly. We can be world beaters in many high-tech, high-end industries, but we will never achieve that throughout the economy if we do socialism. It's not going to happen.
So what will Cameron do? You told us what he should do, but what will he do?
Well, I suspect he'll do nothing. I suspect he'll, just like the negotiation with the EU, he'll pretend that he's achieved a great deal. I mean, I don't know the specifics of what he'll do, but he'll pretend. Sajid Javid will pretend that they've achieved this, that, the other for the workers. But ultimately, no. I'd be extremely depressed, but I'd also be amazed if there's a nationalisation of the business.
Sure.
Wouldn't that be amazing? That a Tory government does Corbyn and McDonald's work for them, and ultimately bails out the multi-billionaire Rajan Tata, who I might tell your listeners owns not just one house in Kensington Park Gardens, the most exclusive address in central London. He owns two. And a few years ago, each house was valued at, wait for this, £300 million. This is the guy who will be bailed out if we get state intervention. Are we serious?
He's also the man who owns Jaguar Land Rover, isn't he, effectively?
Well, of course he does. Tata is a huge global business. I wonder what subsidies that the shareholders have had over the years from these steel mills. I wonder whether or not this has all been an accounting trick, loss-making in one part of the empire that you can carry over to profits onto another part of the empire and not pay tax. I'm not casting aspersions, I'm just raising questions. It's interesting that this side of thing hasn't been considered by the media.
So I just wonder, just before you go, really, Cameron and other politicians then should have thought about the steel industry years and years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and began to diversify and recognise and be honest with the British public and say, that's not where Britain is anymore. The kind of heavy, labour-intensive, the old sort of industrial revolution style of jobs, they've gone. They can be done cheaper in India and China, etc., etc. So we're going to become this kind of country. Should there be more like that of all parties?
Essentially, I'll agree with you. It's a globalised world, and it's not going to return to the old world. You have the mobile phone in your pocket. The microchip is designed in Cambridge. The design of the thing is in San Francisco. It's actually built in China with components from etc., etc. It's a globalized world, and we can't get away from that. Now, that isn't to say that we should have gone down the route which we have, and that every other laid-off manufacturing or mining job is now working for Tesco or in the local pool alley. No, there are ways and means that you don't have to have these MIC jobs. For those who don't understand, that's like McDonald's type jobs. That's the moniker we give it. Low-paid, low-skilled jobs, which of course are absolutely ideal for migrants who don't speak our language very easily. Instead, we should be encouraging the businesses that are going to form the growth areas of the 21st century to be in the UK. And the way to do that, I assure you, is not to bail out failed businesses. And I just want to make one other point, as we're on the subject of politics. Whatever the other reasons you talked about here, I cannot get over the ugliness of the Labour Party and the Green Party saying how dreadful this has happened and all the rest of it. Excuse me, who was it that pushed for all the green taxes, which bumped up the cost of electricity to the steel plant? Labour and the Greens.
You make some interesting points, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager, and of course our podcaster, who has a brand new podcast out and a live show now every Monday at 2 o'clock. Booms and Bust. Don't miss it.